A very good afternoon to ladies and gentlemen. Welcome and thank you for attending our talk, the Sembang Peranakan, Straits Chinese Peranakans, where we will feature lively discussions and presentation by some of the best known personalities of the Straits Chinese Peranakan in Penang and Malaysia abroad. So first of all, I shall introduce Ms. Lilian Tong, who is the Museum Director of Penang Peranakan, mentioned, Vice President of Penang State Chinese Association, President of Persatuan Peranakan Baba Nyonya Pulau Pinang, who is also regarded, who has also won the Lifetime Achievement Award by GTWHI this year. And we shall give Lilian Tong the applause and welcome her. Thank you.
Good evening and thank you for coming. Well, we have a very interesting panel today. We have Lee Soo Kim, Peter Yeo, Lian Tan, and Auntie Pat. So without much ado, since you have been waiting, and I'm sure eager to listen to the stories, let me invite our first speaker, Peter Yeo, on stage.
Thank you.
Okay, Peter is a sixth-generation Penang Baba. And his great-great-great-grandfather was a Peranakan Hokkien merchant from Medan, just like my grandfather. So he has a passion for Baba Nyonya history and has been very active from Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, and right now back in Penang. So actually, he's also a member of the Gunung Sayang Association of Singapore. We were going to invite Fred Saw to be our speaker, but he was not able to attend. And he has a great-grand-uncle, Yo Tim Kee, who was one of the founding members of Penang Baba Bangsawan Club in 1919. And so Peter is today a member of the Persatuan Peranakan Baba Nyonya Pulau Pinang, and he is also a writer for David Estilo's Simply Penang, which is a very best-selling book, a pictorial book of Penang and people, and I think he won an award. Yeah. So today he's going to share with us on
Dondang Sayang, the art of Dondang Sayang, and also with a bit of time after that on Penang Hokkien, how Penang Hokkien came about. Huh?
Yeah, so Peter, can you share with us the art of Dondang Sayang? Because he's very into it.
Yes, thank you, Lilian. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So glad to see so many people who are interested in our art of Dondang Sayang here today. I just wanted to share with you about the origins of Dondang Sayang because I think the older generation always regarded Dondang Sayang as a form of entertainment. As you know, back in our grandfathers' days, where there's no TV, there's no internet, Dondang Sayang is not just a means of a social event, form of entertainment, but people also practice it very frequently. There was like Lilian has mentioned, my great-grand-uncle was a member of the Penang Baba Bangsawan in 1919. The following year, the Penang Baba Bangsawan then registered itself as a Chinese Amateur Dramatic Association, and they were instrumental in bringing the first Dondang Sayang troupe from Malacca to perform in Penang. Of course, the Dondang Sayang Club of Penang came about later in 1954. But I'm jumping ahead of myself. Firstly, for people who have forgotten what's Dondang Sayang, I just want to share very quickly what are the origins of Dondang Sayang. Now, Dondang Sayang literally it means love ballad or ballad of love. And it always involved two singers, preferably a man and a woman. And what they do is that they sing to a standard Dondang Sayang tune. I'm not playing the video here today, but normally we'll play the one by William Tan. That was sung back in 1986. He's got a great voice. The Dondang Sayang repartee between a man and a woman is usually accompanied by violin, the gong, and the rebana drums. Now, where did Dondang Sayang originated? because even in the 1920s, people are already singing it, it is said that Dondang Sayang started in the courts of the Sultan of Malacca. And that was way back in the 12th century. And the people who introduced Dondang Sayang to the Sultanate of Malacca are mainly women from the Riau Islands. Some people say it was by a princess, the Princess Putri Wan Benai of Bintan Island. She was credited as the person who started Dondang Sayang. But of course, among the local Malays, there is also like a folklore going on that Hang Jebat, who is the companion of Hang Tuah, was the one who started Dondang Sayang. But as you know, Hikayat Hang Tuah was first published or printed in 1908. And it was based on a set of manuscripts owned by Kedahan Tengku that dates back to 1848. So if you want to look at whether the Hang Jebat story is true, that's around the time when they attributed it to him. So a lot of, mystery that shrouds the beginnings of Dondang Sayang, as with all folk arts, Now, during the Strait Settlement era, which is in 1836 to 1842, Dondang Sayang started spreading, to the other Strait settlements. Because people will hear, oh, this is a form of entertainment where people come and sing, and they have so much fun and all that. And Dondang Sayang, for those of you who would have heard it, the pantun comes usually in 4-liners. The first 2 lines is what we call the pembayang. The 3rd and 4th line is the maksud. Okay. Next slide, please. This is an example of Dondang Sayang sparring. The man will say, tanam selasih di tepi perigi, lambat laun berbunga juga. Walaupun kasih bertukar ganti, ada masa terkenang juga. So the man is saying, let me plant the basil, grove next to the well. After a while, it starts blooming. The basil flowers, the purple, the beautiful flower. It says, although I have many lovers, but I always think of you. And then the woman will reply, you see, Dondang Sayang, you're supposed to be very spontaneous, and you're supposed to be, to be able to spare each other and then try to outdo each other. In this case, the woman say, buah selasih di atas bangku, ditanam orang di pangkal serai. Kalau rindu sebut namaku, air mata jangan berderai. Which is like, the basil flowers on the bench. I think it was the previous slide. Yes, is planted by someone. If you miss me, say my name, but don't waste your tears now. So that's her way of responding to that guy. So now you know why during our grandfather's times, Dondang Sayang is a form of entertainment. It's that you're supposed to be so spontaneous and you're supposed to be cheeky, and usually the theme of what you sing will relate to the occasion. Because Dondang Sayang is usually sung, if you sing in a wedding, then your pantun will be like something to do with the wedding. If it's a birthday, then your pantun has something to do with that person's birthday or that person's life, the one that you're celebrating. Okay. Now, where do the Baba Nyonya come in here? Because for us, the Dondang Sayang that we have is actually adopted from the Malays. So the Malays started Dondang Sayang. The Baba Nyonya come in later. Okay. Now, what's the difference between Baba form of Dondang Sayang and the Malay form of Dondang Sayang? The main difference is we include a lot of Hokkien terms and idioms. We also pronounce some words the Baba way. And then the meaning of the Malay words may also differ according to our Baba Malay language. And we also perform it at celebratory occasions. Now, this is an example of a Baba style Dondang Sayang. I just read out the pantun because I'm not going to sing it. It says, geramnya simeo tidak terkata, bila langkat pulang barulah dia kata, hei Baba, betul hati lu buta, gua pernah berdiri, lu gasak termuntah. So it's like the bride is saying, the bride is already very angry, but they wait till langkat the guests, go home. Then she say, hey, Baba, talking to the husband, your heart is blind. I'm so tired standing here, but you are, like you're gorging yourself on the food, Sometimes the muntah, like almost like you can throw up, Bapa kiasai marah sangkai Dia bilang baik juga senyum tak tersenyum. Adakah lu dengar batuk berdehum sebab lu mengantuk punya sangkai So this is the father, the groom, and he's chiding the matchmaker. You see, the sangkai is the one who come and, he's like the matchmaker woman, right? He says, just as well the bride didn't smile because adakah lu dengar batuk berdehum? Did you hear her coughing? Because you seem to be sleeping. So you're not doing your job. So this is an example of how Baba Malay is being used. Okay. Now, Dondang Sayang, of course, the birthplace is in Malacca. And in the 70s, I think on TV and RTM, those of you who are old enough, you remember Baba Kim Tek and Cik Aminah, who's always almost like a weekly basis, they'll have this Dondang Sayang on TV. The picture I got here is Lee Yok Po, one of the leading proponents of Dondang Sayang in Malacca. Now, the nice thing about that, what happened in Malacca, is that in 2018, UNESCO has inscribed the Dondang Sayang as representative of an intangible cultural heritage. So it's recognized by UNESCO. Okay.
So when did it come to Penang?
Well, in Penang,
Because I also read in the Patriarch that Datuk Koo Kat Siu's father, Koo Sen Yew, he was in Malacca and he also heard the Bangsawan, and the author said that then he also brought it back to Penang.
a lot of Penang Baba, they like to go to Malacca and also to Singapore because it's a social circles. So everyone will be, I love Dondang Sayang, let me go back and, bring it back, this art form, and get my friends to come together. So I can't help feeling, a lot of them, there's a lot of to and fro. The 1920s one is because the Penang Baba Bangsawan troupe, which later became, of course, Chinese Amateur Dramatic Association. They brought one troupe there. And so they regard theirs as a milestone. But I don't preclude the possibility that even in the 1800s, 1890s, there could be, because there's already relationship between Penang and Malacca. And in the early days, the Babas of Penang, they speak the same Baba Malay language as the Malaccans. Of course, that time, I think there was a study, there was a presentation which members of the State Chinese Penang Association will remember, the colloquium, right? That was held in March this year, where this professor, Dr. Catherine Churchman, was talking about evolution of Penang Hokkien. And she was saying that the reason why Penang, suddenly the Baba Nyonya will start veering towards Hokkien is because in 1881, the Straits settlements have a census. That time in Penang, the Straits-born Chinese, there are 10,477 of us. The Hokkien Chinese, means they're from China, are 16,568. So they already outnumber the Baba Nyonya. And 10 years later, in 1891, there was another census. At the time, the Straits-born Chinese is 16,981. The Hokkien is 24,246. So because of the presence of the British in Penang and setting up of the trade houses in Penang, the trading houses, there are a lot of also Chinese who started coming into Penang. The same thing didn't happen in Malacca because by that time, even a lot of Malaccan Babas were moving to Penang with their family. Many also moving down to Singapore. Yeah. So because of that, the Baba Nyonya community in Malacca, in a way, did not experience this influx of Chinese. But the evolution of the Chinese Hokkien, I'll cover a bit later after this. As you can see, I think, Lillian, you have been taking part in the Chap Gourmet. Chap Gourmet nowadays, we have all the very beautifully lit up, what we call the Dondang Sayang bus. Actually, in the 1950s, it was bus already. Let's see, the next picture actually I should have shown you earlier is the Gucha Pair. Because when it started in the 1920s, it was actually held on the bullock cart. You can see the ox here. And the Dondang Sayang singer will be on the bullock cart, and then they'll go around town. They go around Penang Road, Mantri Street. And
The bullock cart is the stage.
yes, yes. I don't know whether their voice will sound, they'll be shaking on the carriage. Yeah. This is one of the last times where we had a really grand Chap Gome, and with actual Dondang Sayang singers. William Tan, which is a leading proponent of Dondang Sayang from Gunung Sayang Association Singapore. And you can see that he's singing with Cik Putih in front, next to him. And then right behind me is Jun Lo and Cik Ramla, which I think Pat was mentioning, because Pat has met them before, right? Yeah. Yeah. So in 1986, the Dondang Sayang bus, when it went round, it actually stopped at the Yang Dipertua's house, the Penang governor's house, and they went down and sing. And then they went to Kedah House, to Tunku Rahman's house, and then they came out and sing. And I think at the end of it, then they go to the old esplanade, where the singer will come down, and then the music tempo suddenly accelerate, and they dance the ronggeng and joget at the esplanade, in front of the city hall. So that was in 1986. Okay. In Singapore, the Gunung Sayang Association, of which I was a member, it started in 1910, and one of the main aim is to promote Dondang Sayang. They have a book published by Ko Hun Tek, one of the founders, called Pantun Dondang Sayang Baba Baba. And this is one of the most important publications that we have. I think there are some people in Malacca, in KL, over here, who have copies of this, okay? And you can see the example there is so beautiful. You see one of the pantun here, Budi. Tukar baju pakai seluar, coba-coba menanam padi. Saya seorang orang di luar, coba-coba menabur budi. So you can see that it's such beautiful verses. And a lot of Dondang Sayang singers will actually memorize some of this, so they can use it when they're singing. Okay. This is just sharing with you Gunung Sayang Association, the members there. And I think the first play by Gunung Sayang Association, the Wayang Peranakan, called Buang Keruh Mungkut Jernih. In Malay, literally, it's like you throw out the dirty water, you take in clear water. But the meaning for us mean let bygone be bygone. Don't think about the past. That's what we mean. This is the Gunung Sayang Association party in 2010, because in 2011 I moved to KL and I joined the Persatuan Peranakan Baba Nyonya KL Selangor. But the last party I attended in 2010, Baba Victor Goh is one of the leading proponents of Dondang Sayang in Singapore today, besides GT Lai. And then, of course, you can see in between Dondang Sayang performances, they dance ronggeng, joget. All the members will come down. Okay. Okay. And today, this is Fred So that you mentioned, Lila.
Fred is supposed to be here.
Yes, yes. Fred is one of the leading, I would say, entertainers within.
Yeah, and now he's president of Gunung Sayang. Is he?
Oh, now I think it's Alvin, the last I know, yeah, Alvin. Yeah, okay. Okay. These are the two books that I would really recommend for those of you who are more interested, who wants to know more about Dondang Sayang. One is by Professor Tan Sui Beng, and the other one is by Professor Philip Thomas. Philip Thomas, his is published in 1984, called Like Tigers Around a Piece of Meat, the Baba Sao Dondang Sayang. Okay? Okay.
So how do you think we can actually revive Dondang Sayang and actively practice it in Penang?
Yeah, it's not easy because Dondang Sayang, the base must be a strong command of the Malay language. Yeah. And among the Baba, Nyonya people nowadays, a lot of us are the children are not proficient enough in Malay language compared to the old days. And also, besides being proficient in Malay language, you also must be also good in poetry, pantun. Yeah, but I would say to promote it, try to include Dondang Sayang as a form of entertainment in our, like our Persatuan Peranakan, Baba Nyonya, Pulau Pinang's events, or the State Chinese Penang Association, include that as an event, and then get people. They may not be able to do spontaneous singing and all that, but they can use their handphone now, like write down pre-scripted one, At least they perform it,
Yeah, because those days is on the spot.
Correct, yeah.
And you did mention to me about using Hokkien for Dondang Sayang for the Baba Nonyas.
Yes, that's another option. I think there was also a discussion with even Cedric Tan that time about using English or using Mandarin or using Penang Hokkien to sing Dondang Sayang, because although Dondang Sayang traditionally is in Malay, but to promote it, the art form, we can still use the same tune and we can still use verses, but using other language. So explore the possibility of performing Dondang Sayang in other languages.
And so if we are going to use Hokkien for Dondang Sayang, Penang Hokkien is unique. And unlike any in Malaysia, and I think Peter will tell us about this.
Yes. Why is Penang Hokkien so unique? I mean, we always think, someone open their mouth and say, oh, the person is speaking Penang Hokkien, and then whereas someone from Singapore or someone from, say, Klang in Selangor, when they speak Hokkien, it's different from Penang's Hokkien. So what makes Penang Hokkien different? Just going to have very quick, sharing session about the origins of Penang Hokkien. Now, back in 1786, when Captain Francis Light came to Penang, of course, it's not like, you may think that, the story like Christopher Columbus came to America and then the American Indians were there, oh, who's this person? No such thing, because Captain Francis Light, that time, Penang already had people staying there, but not many people. But when he actually negotiated that time with the Sultan of Kedah, and Sultan Kedah said, look, if the British East India Company will help me protect me against Siam, then you can use Penang. So that time, Kole Huan, who is a Hokkien merchant, he's also Kapitan Cina Kuala Muda Kedah. So that means to be Kapitan Cina Kuala Muda Kedah, he's actually appointed by the Sultan Kedah, right, to represent the Chinese. He is the first, on paper, the first Chinese man in Penang. Because when Captain Francis Light came on shore, he was there to greet Captain Francis Light with a gift of fishing nets. And it's like saying, welcome to Penang, So that's when Francis Light said, okay, I'm now taking this as a Prince of Wales Island on behalf of the British Crown. And Kole Huan brought along 500 of his relatives and friends from Kedah. And they were the first people to settle. So these 500 friends and relatives include Malay, Kedah Chinese, okay? And they settled in Penang in 1786. So Penang Hokkien actually came from Kedah Hokkien. That's how it started. When Kedah people speak Hokkien, it sounds exactly like us. But we're probably thinking, oh, you're speaking Penang Hokkien. But actually, Kedah Hokkien predates Penang Hokkien. And where do the Kedah people, the Kole Huan, came from? He came from a county called Samto. Samto in Changzhou. Changzhou is the southern part of Fujian province in China. So Singaporeans tend to speak the Hokkien from Guangzhou, which is the northern part. So that's why there's the difference in pronunciation, Okay. And some of the first Hokkiens to come, they always called the Go Tua Sen, the five big family. You see the Lim. One thing interesting you see, Lim It Kin, he came from southern Siam. He's got a Siamese wife. He moved to Penang in the 1800s, and he's the earliest among the Lim clans to come. Then Chia Tia, who is a pepper trader, first settled in Aceh before moving to Penang in the 1780s. The Tan, the earliest is Tan Gek Tam, which is a tin mining tycoon from Phuket, and he moved to Penang in the 1790s. Kor Su Chang is a wealthy trader in Bencoolen. He came to Penang in the 1820s. And Yo Chin Pun, which is my own great-great-great-grandfather, is a pepper and gata trader in Medan, actually Asahan, Kebabutan Asahan. And they moved to Penang in the 1830s. So you can see the interesting thing is, there's this theory that the first Chinese came from China and they are laborer. It's actually not. These are all established merchants and traders from other parts of Southeast Asia. They came from Medan, they came from Phuket, they came from southern Thailand. They did not come from China. So they are already, in a way, Peranakan. The first Ku, can you go 2 slides back? Another one. Yes, Ku Cheng Lim. He's a pepper trader from Malacca. He married, you see, he knows how to get into, the Ku is the most powerful clan in Penang. At the time when the Ku, he married Ko Chin Yen, the granddaughter of Ko Lei Huan, it's because why? The Ku controls the tin mining business in Kinta district, it's like Chong Keng Kui was, and all that, and even down to Selangor and Johor. But he wants access to what the Ko has. The Ko are Peranakan. They have very close relationship with the British. So, but the Ku were marrying into the Ko family. They became very powerful, like the most powerful of all the clans. Okay? Now, because of that, they also come from the same district, Changzhou, and from Samto. So because they dominate the trade, there are Chinese who come from other parts of Fujian. Not everyone come from that part. But they will then adopt the accent of the Samto Hokkiens, which is how Penang Hokkien came about. Now, the Ko has Kedah origin. So you can see their Peranakan Hokkien has got a lot of Malay words, Kedah Malay words, but pronounced in the Kedah way. Like sambal becomes sambai, we call sambai. Dodol, dodoi. And so someone stupid, Malay called babal. Kedah Malay said babai. Hokkien become bebai. Oh, the girl bebai. So these are all actually Kedah Malay words, but became Hokkien words. The presence of Hokkien from Aceh, Bencoolen, Medan bring a lot of things. One example, Pulut Panggang. Pulut Panggang we call rempah udang in Penang. Why rempah udang? Indonesian call it lemper. But our Penang, the early Nyonya, they heard, lempah. Maybe they say lempah. So they call lempah udang. That become rempah udang. That's how, and then the Dutch, what do the Dutch call their bronze coin? They call duit. The Indonesian also call duit. The Hokkien become Louis. Because Louis, we can't pronounce duit properly because Louis. So Penang become Louis. But there are also those who come from Phuket and Southern Siam, where 1 baht become cepat. Because the exchange rate was exactly 10 cents to 1 baht. So instead of like cekat, cekat is the word we use in Singapore or Malacca. Penang will say cepat, it's just cepat is baht, the Thai baht. So you can see our name for coin or for money come from the Dutch, come from the Thai, the Siamese. That's how we absorb all this in, And then you have colonial British words, for example, like kueh pai ti. Pai ti is from the English word patty shells, because the Scandinavian brought that mold to America in 1900s, and then the Americans they spread it throughout. So including the British or they'll come here, they brought the mold called patty, but then the Nyonya called pai ti, so it becomes kueh pai ti. So that's how we absorb that. Okay. How's Penang Hokkien today? You can see Penang Hokkien today is a hybrid language. Loti, I don't have to say what they are, if you are Penang Hokkien. Sabun, balulai, lompang le chia, Mana esai, mana from Malay, mana, Be tahan is from Malay also. Esai tolong, can you help me? You can see all this. And Penang Hokkien is, in a way, is still an oral language. We don't have a written form. It's an everyday kind of usage kind of language. And it's a market language. You use it in the market. And lastly, it's like going forward.
Will it, is it in danger of disappearing? What is your opinion?
There is that concern that it may disappear. The reason being because being not a written language, a lot of parents here, especially the Chinese who send their children to Chinese vernacular school, they are using Mandarin. And some parents will then subsequently, like they encourage their children, okay, you just stick with Mandarin, I don't have to speak Hokkien to you. So the problem is that's where it started. Then their children will be proficient in Mandarin but don't know Hokkien, So going forward, I think the parents themselves need to inculcate the use of the language with their children. Because parents seems to think that if I speak Hokkien to the children, their Mandarin will become very weak. It's not true. Children, from a young age, if you speak in 3 languages to them, they can speak 3 languages. I mean, in my family, we speak Hokkien, we speak English, we speak Malay, we even speak Thai, because my maternal side, my great-grandmother is 100% Siamese. So from young, we are also taught Thai words. So it doesn't, a child will grow up, they won't get confused. They won't say, oh, no, I mix up my Thai with my Indonesian or my Malay, language. It won't happen. Yeah. So similarly, I think speaking Hokkien, encourage your children, speak Hokkien to them, will not cause them to be weak in Mandarin or anything like that. Okay? I think Penang Hokkien has a good chance to survive because Penangites are very proud of their history, their culture, their heritage, and the language Hokkien is what our regard as an identity marker. They regard that as part of our heritage.
Because Catherine Churchman we heard Catherine Churchman at our colloquium, and she says that in the next 30 years, Penang Hokkien will pupus. So the next time you go to a coffee shop and someone speaks to you in Mandarin, just say, this is Penang, speak to me in Hokkien, I do that.
Yes, I strongly support that. You see, in Penang nowadays, it's not like in the old days where everyone you see the coffee shop is from Penang. Nowadays, you go to very old coffee shops in Penang. Some of the hawkers, they are not from Penang, they're from Johor, I know quite a few, who are not from Penang. So they tend to, start speaking to you in Mandarin because they're not confident enough to pick up Penang Hokkien. But I'm sure with some nudging, some encouragement from us, they will pick up Penang Hokkien, just like what 100 years ago the early Hokkiens did. Yeah. Okay. And, for me, I think I'm a good example of someone who can speak Penang Hokkien, but yet I can speak Malay. It doesn't affect my ability to speak good Malay or English, So I would say, if it's better, if you're trilingual, you're quadrilingual, by all means, promote Hokkien, the Penang Hokkien. Make it a living language. Yeah.
Sure.
And these are some of the books that I used when I did some research into the origins of Penang Hokkien. One is look at the Thai South and Malay North. It's a very good book about the early Penangites. Then there's this other one called Penang Chinese Commerce in the 19th century. And you can see the 5 big clans, surnames are all there. And then this one is also very, very useful. It's Chinese Business in the Making of a Malay State. It's about Kedah and Penang, 1882-1941. So these are the 3 books that I recommend that you get if you want to know more about the early Penang and how we form our identity, how we become what we are.
Dr. Wong Yi Tuan's, is it available from Penang Institute or Areka?
I do believe you can get it, because the book launch was here. I was in KL at the time. I came up for the book launch. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much, Peter. We had an enjoyable time.
Thank you very much.
And I'm sure you've learned a lot about Dondang Sayang and, of course, Penang Hokkien, which now we must champion. So thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much.
And next, I would like to invite our Madame, Auntie Pat, Pat Lim, but I always call her Auntie Pat. She is a matron and a living traditional Nyonya. She is a practicing Nyonya. Now, Pat Lim Chui Iu has been a matron with the Ministry of Health. And but as a child, she came from Phuket at 5 years old to Penang. And her nursing postings to East Coast started her on a kabaya and sarong business, which was actually very thriving back in those days. So every time when I go by to visit Auntie Pat, she always comes out in her sarong and tesa. Yeah, her blouse. She's always in sarong and blouse. And actually today she went to Berkaman. and naughty Dr. Lee Soo Kim said, yes, go for it, go for it. She says, too hot, the weather. So she is also a very accomplished cook because one of my favorite that she cooks is kerabu pisang jantung, which is quite difficult to do. And she is also a contributing writer of this book, Once Upon a Kamching. Kamching is a lidded jar, but it's a play on the words kamching, which means the ties that bind, loyalty, love, between parent and child, friends, and a man and a woman. So she has written 2 stories in it. And in it, she tells us about how she moved from Phuket to Penang and lived in Landrus Lane, and she went to school. So Auntie Pat will tell you, just like in this book and the stories of her life, she's got many, many stories. So this afternoon is another story of the daily life of a Nyonya. Auntie Pat.
Can you hear? Yeah, I wanted to come on and come because she admires my skill of tying a sarung. But the weather doesn't permit it. It's raining outside. And I heard the voice too. Chabogina siu sia. So I quickly have to put on this baju and come.
Tak tentu.
Yeah.
Nyonya tak tentu.
Tak tentu ni anak darah. Tapi lama tak jadi anak darah already. Okay, how do I live my life? The values my grandmother taught me, I think, is still with me. We don't berkeman in the house for anybody to see. You only berkeman in the bedroom, which I do. I can sleep with the sarung and it doesn't fall off. Yeah, I do. And then the first thing you have to do for any decent nyonya is straight from the bedroom to the bathroom. You wash, you clean, you powder yourself before you come out.
What powder? What powder? What brand?
Bedak sujud, tak mau lah. Now from the tin ni. Okay. And then we have to, first thing anybody will do in a nyonya household is to open all the windows and the door. Why? We want all the bad vibes to go away and the fresh air to come in. So this is a routine for us. First thing you come out, you get up, open the doors, open the windows. And before you sleep, make sure there's no clothes that are used hanging behind the door. Everything is washed, ironed, and starched and kept. So even if I'm found dead, I'll have no unwashed clothes. I live alone, so I can be found dead. No unused clothes behind the door. They don't want anything dirty in the house. All right, do that. And then we have a habit also, which saves us from this pandemic too. When you come home, wash your feet and your hands. Right, Sikip? Before you do anything. So we don't want any dirt from the house. You don't from the road, you don't want them to bring in any dirt. So it's also a Malay custom, right? That you wash your feet before you enter the house. So it's become standard to us. Don't have the Kari Jamaluddin doesn't have to tell us. We come back from anywhere, straight to the bathroom, wash your feet, wash your hands, and come out. That's our practice from young. So it's nothing to us, right? So if the nyonya thinks that if you are well dressed, your sarung is well starched and ironed, and so is your baju, so will your thoughts and action be. You will be clean in your thoughts and your action, and you won't harm anyone. Am I right? Yeah, there's a practicing nyonya there too. This is what we have been taught, and these are the values we hope to pass on to our children. That you always be clean. She says, I'm a good cook. I'm more of a food critic than a good cook. I will tell you what's missing and what you should not do. Yeah. This thing that we call, what do you call it? Kiam chai boy? What do they say? What is kiam chai boy? And they say it's authentic Nyonya food. Kiam chai boy. It's the food that we serve in many restaurants in Penang. Kiam chai boy only happens if you have a tung tok. You have
A party.
Yeah.
Long table.
long table. So all the remnants from kiam chai are tu to tung, chai boy, and the most important thing is jiu cha. Must go into that soup. So what does our chai boy in Penang means? To me, it is kong asam ni. You know what kong asam is? Where you get all the trotters from Pai Thi Kong on Che Kao, Che Kao or Che Chap after New Year, when you cannot finish your roast pig, then everything goes into the chai boy.
I think our kiam chai boy, Baba kiam chai boy, is equivalent to the Italian pizza, where we throw in everything that is not being taken, that is not being used.
Correct.
So the Nona people, the Baba people are not wasteful people. They are
Correct. You are right.
They are very
We are not wasteful people.
lang.
Correct.
So it's just like the Italian pizza. Whatever we have, as Auntie Pat says, the most important ingredient is the yucha.
Jiu cha.
It will bring sweetness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the smell of the juhu. Yeah, you must have the smell of the juhu in the kiam chai boy. So what shops are selling is kong asam. So I'm a critic. So I have to keep my mouth shut if I want to eat free food from people like her. So wherever she brings, I say, very good. I love her calls. Come down, Auntie Pat, I'm downstairs. Yeah, but so those are the things I wish we could keep them. We wish we could keep it, but it's a lot of work doing Nyonya cooking. It's a lot of work. We are not wasteful people. So in any tungto dinner, we have chicken. The chicken is used in many ways. Curry chicken, gulai ke. The breast is used what do you call that?
Krabu.
Krabu mok mi. Yeah? The intestines is also not thrown. It's used to make chak timun sui. So for one chicken, you can do so many things from the chicken that we have. Nothing is wasted. How do we come up with jiu cha? The vegetables for a tungto, it has many forms, triangles, squares, and they cut flowers for the soup. Do you throw them away? No. It's all kept for the jiu cha. Right? So now I'm a food critic. Peter is laughing. Right. So these are the things that I wish we could keep. And don't just name all our food Nyonya authentic, Nyonya food. They are not. One of my specialists in the hospital told me he loves achar wak. I said, go and get from Platypus Market. Because he told me, that rubbish in Platypus Market. What are you talking about? I said, yeah, they're selling. Everybody says it's very good. Why don't you try? He asked me, where is the roast shallot? And where is the cauliflower? I said, yeah, they didn't put that, huh? Yeah, they didn't put that. Modern version. Yeah, modern version. But those are the basic ingredients. Awak means, in our local language, awak means Burmese. Yeah? Burmese achar awak has got kangkong, which doesn't keep. So we cut off the kangkong, but we still keep the cauliflower, and the roast shallot, and the red and green chili. Right. So what we have in Balticus market is half the ingredients, I would say, that should have gone into the achar awar. And we still say it's authentic Nyonya food. So I have to go around not like my grandmother cook. And then one food author, cookbook author called me up one day, and he was very upset. He said, "Why is your nasi ulam blue now?" How do I answer him? I said, "We got a lot of bunga telang here lah." That's why our nasi ulam is blue. Nasi ulam in Penang, blue nasi ulam is Kelantan. Yes. Nasi ulam in Penang is slightly yellow. Yes. Because we use fresh turmeric with warm rice. Yes. Right. See, so should I criticize or should I not criticize? And we don't use dry prawns. We use grilled salted fish. Yes. Because it's also confinement food with a lot of pepper. Nowadays, we cannot find quercetin, all right, it smells. The bunga tanjung plant is too high to climb to get the pucuk, so we don't use. Yeah? The daun mangkok, we also don't plant for our fences. So these three things are all missing. Yeah? But the main thing is, Penang nasi ulam is warm and blended with fresh kunit, young kunit. That's why it's slightly yellow, not blue. And so he was quite upset when he called me. He said, "Why?" I said, "I don't know. We have plenty of bunga telang. When I walk waterfall also, I pick bunga telang."
But today, I feel there's too much fusion into our original Nyonya cooking.
Yeah, which is so sad.
Everybody claims that it is original.
Correct.
I feel this is very wrong.
Correct.
There's too much fusion.
Okay, I got a friend there.
Yeah, he's a good cook.
Oh, thank you very much. I got a friend.
Because his cake acid.
Okay, good. Right.
Okay, Auntie Pat, go on.
You remember all right there?
Yeah?
Okay.
Then what's the original Nyonya food? Like, because I'm a young parent, I know how to cook.
I also know how to eat, and I also know how to criticize. Then I have to go not like my grandmother make. But I don't know what is real. I can't tell you what is original Nyonya food.
Stop.
But I know what is cooked in my house only.
Matter of fact,
Yes.
for me, I have taken the best Tomba
Yeah.
of Phuket.
Anyway, yes.
That's one real
Okay, we will use this for questions and answer later because we have our next speaker waiting for his turn. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Auntie Pat. Okay, someone help Auntie Pat down.
Oh, okay. Now I like a handsome man.
Oh, he's not handsome?
Okay, next we have Lian Tian. And all the way from Malacca, he braved the floods of KL to get to us. Now, Lian Tian, this young man is, let's see, he's fifth generation Baba, and he is the manager of the Baba and Nyonya Heritage Museum in Malacca. It is very well curated. Well, he joined Baba House after his postgraduate study with the National University of Malaya, and in which he, I think, wrote a thesis on the identity of the 21st century Baba Nyonya. And he also presented papers at our Peranakan convention annually. Last time was in Malacca, he presented a paper. So he's got two Nyonya grandma, which if you his Facebook, he's very fond of them, very sayang them. Two Ama is the Mama Kandang and Mama Batu Berendan. So this one tells you where they are from. So he is very involved in also KL Association, and he helps around. So he is Vice President of the Persatuan Peranakan Baba Nyonya Malaysia. So let's have, are you doctor? Are you doctor? No, not okay. Lee Yan Tian present to us his topic on the Babas of Malacca.
Okay, hi, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, thank you, Lillian, for introducing, and also thank you to the host for having me here today. Yeah, it's my first time actually leaving Malacca since COVID. Okay, I'll be talking a little bit on the Peranakan Chinese or Baba Nyonya of Malacca. Yeah, I'm very sure that most of you would already know, but I think that it's only fair for me to actually highlight a little bit on our identity. Yeah, much have been talked about the Babas and Nyonyas or the Peranakan Chinese, and then nowadays a lot of people come to me and ask, when you call yourself a Baba or a Nyonya, how would you identify yourself? Yeah, this, when I work in the museum, many people often ask me these questions until most of them would say that, why it's so hard for us to actually identify you guys, or the Babas and Nyonyas? Then I told them that is because we all look alike. Unless our faces are blue, then you can easily identify who are the Babas and Nyonyas. But because today most of us would not be wearing like these, and also like these if we walk on the streets. Yeah, we will be wearing modern attire. So that is a little bit difficult for us to identify ourselves. Then again, they ask, then how do you, identify yourself if it's not by the appearance and stuff like that? That was why it inspired me to actually do my research. Yeah, and from there, I can say that Peranakan or the Baba and Nyonya identity is something that we sort of self-identify ourselves. Yeah, we would say very proudly that I'm a Baba, or I'm a Nyonya, or I'm a Peranakan nowadays. Yeah, and at the same time, there's no, people often say that, oh yeah, you have that Baba look. What do you mean by Baba look? Do I not have two eyes and one nose? Okay, so these are the things that they would say, oh, Baba have bigger eyes. True. Okay, or they would say that Baba are more tan. Yeah, maybe, okay, for my case, yeah, I'm a little bit tan. When I go to other places, people would often mistaken me for being a Malay. Yeah, but not all Babas would have that kind of so-called Baba look. So then again, what it means actually to be a Baba. Yeah. So next, I think, yeah. Okay, I would say that we are a group of minority in Southeast Asia, not just Malacca. Yeah, and then the Malacca Baba often claims that we are authentic. We are the original, yeah, so to say. But then again, how true is this? I'm from Malacca. Okay, I wouldn't say that we are the original or the most pure Baba. Yeah, because we each have got our own uniqueness, like what Peter Yeo have shared just now. Yeah, how it evolves. Same goes for the Babas in Malacca. Yeah, later on I would highlight the differences between Malacca and Penang. Yeah, but then when we talk about Malacca, yeah, how do we came about? We have to go through the history of the Malacca Sultanate, yeah, when it was opened up as a port, and then when we have traders from all over the world came for trading. It included the Chinese traders, and then, that was how the Baba came about. The traders, like those days, it's not like today, yeah? I fly from Penang last night, from KL last night to Penang, and I'm returning back to Malacca tomorrow. Yeah, in the past, you can't do that even from Malacca to Penang. Those from China, they have to actually sail to Malacca, and then they return back to China when the change of monsoon. So they would spend time in Malacca for about 4 to 5 months, and that was when they start to have second home.
Malaysia, my second home.
They made Malacca their second home. Yeah? So when we have this intermarriage, why? Because at that time, there are no Chinese women available yet. Because it's a Chinese custom that the ladies are not allowed to leave their country. They are not even allowed to leave their homes. To leave their country is even impossible at that point of time. Yeah, so the traders who came over are mainly men, and then to set up homes, you of course have to marry lah. So the only available women folks at that point of time in Malacca are of people from the Malay archipelago. Okay? And then I would say that the Babas and Nyonyas, we are concentrated in the Straits settlement. Yeah, Malacca, Penang, and Singapore, you all know that. And I would say also how to identify ourselves is that we are a form of maybe a localized Chinese. Yeah, because a lot of people ask me, then how do you define yourself? Then I would say that, okay, a lot of them would say, oh, Chinese who can't speak any Chinese dialect, then is a Baba. But that is not the case for those from Penang. You speak Hokkien, and you don't speak the patois like how we do. Yeah? So then, if you say that Chinese who cannot speak Chinese, then is a Baba, then it's not fair for those from Penang. And also not fair for those in Phuket, they speak Thai. Yeah? So I would say that, to easily define ourselves, it would be a localized form of Chinese, where you have your local mold. Yeah, like those in Penang, you are very much influenced by the Hokkiens around you, and whereas us in Malacca, yeah, we came from a longer history, so the Hokkiens are not that dominant. Yeah, so we speak a patois that is known as the Baba Malay today. Yeah, so and then we enter this identity crisis. Yeah, where we can have the next slide. Yeah, where we actually often being labeled many things. One of them is OCBC, it's not the bank. Okay, if it's the bank, then I'm happy I got a share in it, but it's not. Orang Cina bukan Cina. Why? Because we are not able to. My father, in fact, he couldn't speak Hokkien or Chinese. That was why he made a decision to send me and my brother to Chinese school to educate us, to have Chinese education, so that we would not be looked down upon. Yeah, so we have always got this impression that the Babas in Malacca, they all are OCBC lah, Chinese but cannot speak Chinese. Orang Cina bukan Cina. And then we have this argument whether Baba is a biological thing or is it a cultural thing. Because a lot of people say that, it has got nothing to do with your blood. It's cultural, it's how you live, how you practice the culture. But then again, at the same time, there are some that claim that I am of true blue Baba. I am of how many generations? So how do you, how is it actually? Is it by blood, true blue, you must be genuinely born a Baba or a Nyonya, or is it you just practice all the culture, you speak like one, you dress like one, yeah, and then you can be considered as one? Yeah, these are all the questions that, I think many of us find it hard to actually explain or to answer.
For Baba Nonyas, we cannot say that we are true blue because in the first place, we already campur with Chinese, campur with Thai, Burmese, Indonesians, Bataks, Minangkabau. So I actually don't think there's a thing such as true blue Baba Nonya.
Yeah, maybe we should change how campur you are. Okay. Now, today, because of all this confusion, we are often labeled with all these identity markers. We are always associated. For us, in the South, we are always associated with Bokalua. You must know how to eat Bokalua to be a Nyonya. You go to a Nyonya restaurant, I must try Bokalua because it's a Malacca thing. Okay? And then also, we are, linked with all these markers, the Chanap, which is very typical Malacca.
Lee Yan Ten is a specialist craftsman for this. He makes this and I can't do that. And he is like one of the very few Babas who can do that, or even very few Baba Nonya people who can do that.
Okay, and then also with all the other blings, like how Lillian is dressed. Okay, so we are always associated with all these. But then again, do we need all these to sort of, represent us? If we don't have all these, are we still a Nyonya or a Baba? Okay, these are all material things that have been highlighted in recent years, due to the movies, and then social media also play a part. So we often being associated with all these. If we take away all these, that was why a lot of people say that why it's so hard for us to identify people of your community. Because why? They don't have all this. They have this impression in them that, a Nyonya would dress in kebaya and have, brooches, all the blings and kasut money around. If you go to Malacca today, only the hotel workers and also my museum staff would be wearing that. And I don't think only a handful of them are of Baba and Nyonya origin. Yeah, so how do we, in the modern time, identify the Babas and Nyonyas? I think it's not even, not just us in Malacca having this problem, also in Penang.
Yeah, people think I'm a waitress when I go to work every day.
Okay, so now coming to the north and the south, we always talk about this. Yeah, in fact, I think Lillian asked me to highlight a little bit on the north and south. That is it the south are purer in that sense, or is the north not so pure? Because we have this misunderstanding in Malacca. I don't know about Penang. Malacca Baba always say that the Penang Nyonyas are not pure.
Can start fight, don't. Can start fight.
Because why? They said they don't speak the patois. And then when I talked to a few Penang Baba, they said, hey, you all speak Huanawi. Then how? You get what I mean? You see? So then who is pure and who is not pure? So I believe it is something that although we know each other, we meet almost every year, last time before COVID, we meet almost every year, but we don't understand each other. We don't know each other. We just say, hey, hi, or you dress very nice. Penang Kabaya always very nice. Okay, then that's it. And then the Phuket people, with their crown and everything, but we don't know them. We don't even know each other, So I did a bit of research. Yeah, so why are we so different? I believe, again, it comes back to the local influences, the environment. Yeah, if we look at Malacca, we have longer history. Yeah, the Chinese have settled down in Malacca, I think, as early as 1400s. When Cheng Ho came to Malacca, his assistant, Fei Xin, recorded that at that point of time, in the year 1436, in his records, there are already Chinese people, Chinese-looking people, living among the local community in Malacca. And so I believe that was the very beginning of our community, the local Chinese. And on the other hand, if you look at Penang, it started off with, modern Penang history started off with Francis Light, in 1786. So it's like 400 years gap. That was why we spoke Malay, because at that point of time, Malacca, everybody comes to Malacca, we have to speak the common language, which is Malay, before the arrival of the British, or even Portuguese and also Dutch. So later on, it sort of formed, because Baba Nyonya community is not like we come today, tomorrow became Baba Nyonya. It's few generations and a few hundred years. Whereas in Penang, the Hokkiens are more dominant. And then at the same time, also geographical differences where you are very much influenced by the Thai, like what Peter have elaborated just now, and Burma. whereas us, we are closer to Java. So in our cooking, we enjoy more rempah, lemak, whereas in Penang, Assam, I just had Assam laksa this morning. Okay, Assam, and sweet and sour, like how the Thais do. Yeah, so these are some of the differences. And at the same time, we must always remember that in Malacca, although all Baba and Nyonya community is very much molded by the Hokkien culture, but if you look at it, in Malacca, we hardly speak the Hokkien dialect. Yeah? That was because of the population. In Penang, like what Victor you have mentioned just now, that the Hokkiens are dominant. Whereas in Malacca, we don't really speak Hokkien because the community is so diluted. Yeah, so we have other races. We even have the Portuguese. We have the Chetis. Yeah, so we all speak a common language, which is the Malay language, and somehow or other evolve into our patois. Yeah, the Baba patois, which Malay, Baku, but has got quite a number of Hokkien loan words inside. Okay. Okay, coming back to the 21st century, we always talk about Baba and Nyonya, we talk about the past. What about the present and also the future? Yeah? When we talk about the past, yes, it's very interesting to know about the past and to talk about the past, but then I think it is also very important for us to talk about the current generation so that, it have got this continuation of the community. Like how do we identify Baba and Nyonya? So based on my research, I think we cannot just stick, okay lah, if you are born of a Baba family, then you are one. But then if you don't practice, you don't even cook the proper Nyonya cuisine. You don't even know your own culture. You don't even want to identify as being one. I got an example. My cousin, my own cousin, born in Bangsa, in KL. My Pepe, my uncle moved to KL, and then my cousin was born there. The wife, one day we have a family reunion somewhere in the year 2019, just before the COVID. Yeah, so we had family luncheon. So we just talked, and then the wife asked me, "Hey, you all are Baba Nyonya, right? I always see you being interviewed, in papers and all that." I said, yeah. Then, your grandfather and his grandfather is the same person, ma? They say, yeah. Then he is a Baba also, lah. Then I say, yeah. Then my cousin, no, we are not. I say, what you mean that you are not? Just because they don't live like one, and they don't speak the patois anymore. My cousin himself said that I'm not a Baba. You see? But he is by birth a Baba. His mom, my mom, is from Penang. But he said that I don't know Penang and Malacca that much, you see. So I'm not a Baba. So self-identification is very important. Not just by birth. And at the same time also, I believe all the other criteria, have to complement each other. A lot of people now are antique collectors. They enjoy the material culture so much that they actually collected items more than we do. So can they be qualified as a Baba? So I believe all this, your blood, your bloodline, your lineage, it's very important. Practices, language, the material culture, and also behavior. All these complement one another to make us who we are today. Because a lot of people, when I talk to them, say, "Oh, we all Nyonya very halus lah, very proper." But then at home they shout at each other, you don't know. Okay, so these are the things that complement us, no doubt. We always say that, Peranakan or Nyonya very proper. Yeah, so I think all these would have to complement each other to easily identify our own community. Okay, and then this photograph is taken in the year 1920 of my great-grandmother, great-grandfather, and the little boy here is my grandfather. Okay? So, in the past, it's easily to identify people like this. We look at photograph, okay, they are of Baba and Nyonya. Yeah, they dress like this, they have that look, that attire. But then, today, how do we want to identify ourselves? Yeah? if you look at the next photograph, it was taken, I think, during my graduation. I was a bit plump then. Okay. Now, at that time, we said, okay, we want to dress up, to have this family portrait taken. Then, if you look at this, oh, yala, they are all Baba and Nyonya. But then, if you look at the next photograph, yeah, daily, we don't dress like that, Yeah, I believe many of us also, I don't think Lilian dress in kebaya every day, do you? Most of the time, I see you in the museum, but not every day. So we cannot take all this as our identity marker. So how do we move forward? Yes, I do say that, don't get me wrong, these are all very important things to discuss or to talk or to promote our culture. But at the same time, we must always remember what is important. Yeah, my grandma also selfie with me, not like those days were very stern. If you look at all the grandma portraits, they're all like, because they're not used to having photographs taken in the past. Yeah, so how? A lot of people say that like Penang Hokkien also, it would just die out in 30 years. And a lot of people also say that the Babas and Nyonyas are actually dying or fading away. Yeah, but I would say that, instead of looking at we would fade or dying, I would say that we are evolving actually. Okay? To look at the culture itself, from the very beginning, is an evolution itself. If our forefathers who came from China or other parts of the world to Malacca or to Penang, they maintained that kind of lifestyle. They did not adjust to the local elements. We would not be with Peranakan or Baba and Nyonya today. Lilian would not be wearing sarung kebaya, maybe samfu, or the tongue dress. Yeah? The very fact that our forefathers actually adjusted to their environment, made us who we are today. So we are now, I think, going through another process. We cannot deny that, we don't want to be modern. We don't want to live in this modern era. We cannot. We have to accept all these modern pressures and then, move forward from where we are today. It's not like, you must be a Baba, then you must be like how your grandfather used to live. Yeah? My grandfather last time used to ride in horse carriages maybe, but now we drive. Yeah, so these are the things that we have to accept, but at the same time maintain certain cultural elements like perhaps the food aspect. Yeah, how educate our younger generation, like how it is done in the past. Those days we tumbuk, we pound or we giling. Nowadays, if you were to do that, most of them won't cook. Even my mother blend. Okay, just press the button, that's it. Okay, so we have to adapt and accept all these modern changes around us. Yeah, and then move forward. Like, most of us are sent to English schools or Mandarin speaking schools. So most of my cousins, in fact, they don't speak the Baba Patois anymore. I'm very fortunate because I grew up with my grandmother. So I can speak the Patois. And also I was sent to Chinese school, yeah. But then what would our future be? If you say that, to be a Baba, you must be able to speak the Patois for our Malacca case. For Penang, I don't know if you must speak the Penang Baba. Yeah, it is good to promote or to preserve that language aspect of ours, but then we must also remember that we cannot force. Then many of us, the youth would tend to like, why is it? Why you want me to do this? It's very weird, But then awareness, I believe, is most important. Yeah, to make sure that our culture would continue to move on. And at the same time, when there is awareness, there is hope. Yeah, which I think the next slide, this would be my last slide already. Yeah, awareness is very important, irrespective of our differences. It is very important to spread awareness of our own identity among ourselves. Yeah, no matter how different we are, no matter I speak the Baba Malay, you speak Penang Hokkien or what, that awareness itself is very important. Yeah? And that it gives hope to the continuation of our culture, and then I believe we would not fade away. We will still be around in another form. Okay.
Thank you, Lee. Okay, that's true, because we have also this debate at the Asian Civilizations Museum Symposium, where they're saying that some people are so purists, they want the sarong kebaya to be still worn the same way, and they don't like the big bunga. Then I say, I must have a big bunga because I'm a dancer. Or like Raymond of Rumah Kim Chu, he complains that when he puts the mane and the diamonds all over his baju, his kebaya, he gets tegur on Facebook. But he says, if I'm doing this for a bride on her wedding day, everybody is coming out in beautiful kebayas, so my bride has to be outstanding. So sometimes it is too much of the tegur that hinders us from moving forward. So thank you very much, Lee. He's our youngest speaker, and of course, he graduated from university, and this was, I think, one of his theses. So thank you again. Now, next, without much, I don't think she needs much introduction, we have Dr. Lee Soo Kim. And I'm sure someone in the room, or maybe all of you in the room, will actually own one of her books. She writes storybooks, and on Manglish, on Baba Nyonya stories. And she was formerly the associate professor at the School of Language Studies and Linguistics at University Kebangsaan Malaysia, and founding member and founding president of the Peranakan Baba Nyonya Association of Kuala Lumpur and Selangor. So she has written a lot of books, and most of them are award winners. Without much ado, let's get her to tell us how she writes her stories, how she came about them.
Thank you very much, Lillian. Thank you to Peranakan Penang Festival, to Josie Day and team for inviting me here. I hope I can take off this mask because I find that I can't breathe. Okay, my talk is entitled Growing Up in the Baba Family, Stories from a Nyonya. And I guess it's quite appropriate because Peter Yeo was talking about Penang Peranakan culture, and Tien was speaking about the Malaccan perspective. And I am a sixth generation Nyonya with links to both Penang and Malacca. So the first slide, Penang Lang, my mother is from Penang, so I'm very familiar with the Penang Peranakan community and culture. And this photograph is of my maternal grandmother, a very strong, feisty woman. Somehow the Nyonyas are all strong and feisty, probably because of the matriarchal, the strong, I contend, the strong matriarchal influence of the Nusantara, right? Maybe Minangkabau, maybe Balinese, I don't know, but there's always a strong feist in all our families, right? The women are strong, even though it was a patriarchal
and too much
culture. So this grandma of mine had 6 daughters, but she had to give away 2, and that itself is another story, which I will not go into right now. And she believed very strongly in education. So she made sure that all her daughters were educated. Next slide. And unfortunately, I did not get to meet her. She passed away after World War II. But there were stories of how she made sure that, the daughters were sort of protected because during World War II, I'm sure you know, right, that there was this fear that the Japanese soldiers would come and, get hold of the daughters. So she made sure that they were protected, and she did not marry them off. I was just talking to Chris Ong over lunch yesterday. He told me a story of how there was this family with 9 or 10 daughters, and they married off the daughters during the Japanese occupation. But my mother and her sisters were all single, and then later on, after World War II, they were given the choice of their own marriage partners. So through my maternal line, linked to Penang, and the next slide, to the paternal line, linked to Malacca, because my father was a Malaccan Baba. So in a way, an interesting position to be in, born in Kuala Lumpur, bred in Kuala Lumpur, but with insights into both communities. So it's quite interesting when at the annual conventions, I get to meet all the babas and nyonyas from Penang and from Malacca and Singapore. And the Penang nyonyas say, "Kau hami, I'm cakap hami su." And the nyonyas from Malacca, apa je cakap, because they don't understand each other. The old nyonyas from Penang speak Penang Hokkien, and the old bibis from Malacca speak Baba Malay, and they don't understand each other. So looking at this photograph, again, as Tian was saying, very formal, no smiling, I suppose because they pay a lot for to go to the studio in those days, and always very formal. And you can see the very interesting mix of cultures, because as we know, it is a hybrid culture, a very interesting convergence historically, geographically, for this culture to flourish, adapting and assimilating all kinds of influences, right? Chinese, along with Nusantara influences, and on top of it, layers of European influences, because of the Portuguese influence, followed by the Dutch influence, followed by the British and European influences. So through the years, I have been writing. Next slide. I started off with nonfiction. I wrote a column called Malaysian Flavors, in which I highlighted a lot of wonderful idiosyncrasies about Malaysians. For example, I never realized that it is, someone from England, I never realized that it's strange when you do not say thank you when someone compliments you. Because in our culture, when someone says, "Wow, you're looking so nice today, your hairstyle is really good," old hair lah. And then she asked, what's wrong with Malaysians? Every time I compliment them, they always throw back the compliment at me. Like, "Your dress is so pretty." "No lah, Pasar Malaman or Metro Jaya." And she says, "It's so rude, you Malaysians, you never want to accept a compliment." And I realized, oh, no, it's not rudeness. It's just that we feel very uncomfortable. We are kind of modest, so we actually love the compliment. I mean, please compliment, but we do not say thank you. We just say, "Oh, no lah, you was looking very nice, and so on. So wonderful idiosyncrasies about Malaysians, which was encapsulated in Malaysian Flavors. And then, of course, I went on to write Manglish, because we have this incredibly unique way of talking. We use the English language from a country 8,000 miles away, but because we are Malaysians, we got all our interferences, la, and and so on. So Manglish is another very interesting variety. Next slide. So after writing nonfiction, in 2008, I decided to try fiction. And of course, why not write from my own culture? So the first book was called Kebaya Tales, published in 2011. And I was quite astonished, because I was kind of worried after it got published, like, who's going to listen to all my grandmother's stories? Stories passed down to me by my mother, my aunts, my grandmother. But eventually the book was published, and it sold out very quickly. And it went into a second, third print run, and just 2 years ago it became a bestseller. After Kebaya Tales, there were still lots of stories I wanted to tell, and so I wrote another collection called Sarong Secrets, because after Kebaya, of course, you must have the sarong. And after that, I thought, okay, been there, done that, wrote my 2 collections. But Wallet Poon, the editor of Marshall Cavendish, said, "No, you got to write another one. You got to do a trilogy." And she even sent a book cover for the next book. And so this time, in the last one, Manak Mischiefs, of Playboys, Patriarchs, and Paramours. Of Patriarchs, Playboys, and Paramours. It's more like short stories about the Babas. So that's the trilogy of short stories. Next slide. So just very quickly, a review by Professor Pennacook. This book is a succulent mixture of colors, kabayas, croissant, and conversations, of scents, spicy food, and feisty families. Sukim brings a sharp eye, her love of stories, and a keen sense of the verbal and visual to this delightful book, which gives us a chance to savor the richness and diversity of Peranakan lives. So it's not easy. Can you imagine if you're an English person writing about England, or if you're Japanese writing about Japan, Japanese short stories? That's one dimension. But if you're a writer trying to write about a very diverse, colorful culture where you've got all kinds of languages and all kinds of influences, how do you go about it? So that was a challenge that I faced. And I guess it helped a lot that I grew up in a Baba Nyonya family. Next slide. So this is a photograph of my paternal grandmother, Ho Chuan Niu. A very, again, a strong, kind of formidable character, lovely high cheekbones, and beautiful complexion. And all she had on the dressing table, if I can recall, was just oil of ule, or the oil of ulan, right? That's all they had. No serums and anti-aging, anti-lifting or lifting and all the stuff that we girls use nowadays. And I remember as a child, I used to enjoy watching her dress up. And in those days, Tian, as you're saying, today we just wear ordinary clothes, but she actually got dressed up. And unlike Pat, she actually did not dress up in the bedroom. She dressed up downstairs in the second hall. I lived in a long pre-war house, and she would come out from the bathroom, berkemban, right? Just a sarong up to her chest. She'll come out of the bathroom, go to her cupboard, pull out her sarong. She'll choose what sarong she does, just stacks and stacks of sarongs in the cupboard. And she'll pull out the sarong and wear the sarong under her casual berkemban sarong. Then she would put on her desa and button up. And then with one tuck, she'll pull away the casual sarong. All this was done without having to step into the dressing room or the bedroom, because we lived in a house where it was a long flight of stairs to go upstairs, and she wasn't bothered to do that. So everything was done just downstairs. And after that, she would go and to the cupboard again and pull out her little jar of bedak sejuk, and she'd powder herself, put water into a little paste and powder herself with the rice powder and powder her face. And whatever extra, as Pat says, we do not waste. She calls us, the granddaughters, come here, Mari. And she'll plaster her extra bedak sejuk on our faces. This was the part which we hated. I liked watching her dress up, but I hated the part of the bedak sejuk, because if those of you who have tried it will know that after a while, your face gets all stiff and tight. So it's really good masking system, right? And at that time, I just sort of was amused watching her dress up, never realizing that one day, many years down the road, I would also be having this thing about dressing up as well. And okay, that's the photograph. Can you just go back to the previous slide? So again, that's a photograph of her with her grandpa. She was never given a choice of her love partner. She was just married off very young, at 13 or 16 years, I can't quite remember, but she always was, when I was given a place in university, she reminded me, you're so lucky. I never have that chance. I never had that choice. I was just married off to someone whom I did not love, and I never had the chance to educate myself. And if I were you in the position, I would have become a doctor or a businesswoman. So next slide. So in a way, if you look back from a bird's eye view, it was actually, in a way, the fact that the women of that time, the bibiks of that generation, did not have those opportunities, right? There was no education opportunities, so a lot of them, they were expected to be very, very good daughters, and then get married and become very good mothers and homemakers. But I suppose then, with the wealth of the babas, with the opportunities and all the wonderful influences that they were exposed to, they expressed themselves in craftsmanship, in artisanalship. And today we are celebrating this wonderful Peranakan material culture, but the thing that it actually came from that time, right, when women were not given that kind of opportunity, so they created this a very wonderful material culture, but of course with the help of the babas, because the babas, the rich families, they had the money and the resources to finance them. So here's just a montage of photographs of the various components of the sarong kebaya ensemble, and that slide there is a collection of Manet shoes. I have, I think, about 20 pairs of Manet shoes in the cupboard, and I come up thinking that if the nyonyas of the past, if the bibiks of the past had foreseen that many, many years down the road, one day, we would all be struck with COVID, they would have done a mask with beads instead of custard manik, right? Because it's so creative. Next slide. So, of course, growing up in a Baba Nyonya household, there was always this wonderful culture of food, right? There was there were always people dropping in, aunties, uncles, because I live in an extended family with my paternal grandparents and my family, and there were always visitors coming by, so there's always lots of food. Every morning, my mother would make a pot of coffee. There was breakfast, followed by lunch. There was tea time, with goreng pisang or cakes or the wonderful, koi bakul with the yam and the sweet potato. Then there was dinner, and then there was supper, and a wonderful culture of food. And mother was a very good cook. Next slide. So if you look at this photograph, because I have linkages with both communities, it was quite a good position to be in, because then I had Nyonya food, Penang Nyonya food, as well as Peranakan Nyonya food. So mother cooked the Nyonya Penang dishes, for example, juhu cha, hongki, and up there is otak-otak, and then that one is a picture of a buah kelong, which I think my grandmother taught my mother. Next slide. So how do you write short stories of the babas and nyonyas without mentioning food? So I have to, of course, do that. But of course, you have to do that in such a way that it becomes very interesting. You have to try and describe the sounds, the smells, and so on. So just very briefly, in the mornings, the unmistakable rhythmic tune of chili and sambal belacan being pounded in a stone mortar, or the grinding of the batu giling as fresh red chili morphed into a glistening paste, the crack of crab shells being prized open, the metallic twang of a stainless steel cleaver smashing garlic pips on a wooden board, and so on. In the second paragraph, so those were the sounds. Second paragraph, the smells. It was the aroma of the curries that was the most mind-blowing. The spicy, sour, mouth-puckering scent of a prawn and pineapple curry simmering in thick tamarind juice, or the rich lemak scent of a fish curry flavoring the air. Curry powder frying in a pan of hot oil perfumed with curry pile leaves and cinnamon made Kai go weak in his knees. So this is a story called The House of Smells and Noises in Sarong Secrets. So hopefully to create that kind of ambience about the Nyonya household. Next slide. Most of you would know, I'm sure, when it comes to cooking, the mothers never had the recipe books. They did not write down their recipes. It was all agak-agak. So my mother herself, and this mother, she was a very good cook. I wasn't really interested in cooking at first, because my mother was such a good cook that my father would be very particular. All he needed was to eat a particular dish, and he would know who cooked this. This is not mother's, He only wanted food cooked by my mother. So of course we the daughters did not dare cook, because mother was such a good cook. But later on, after my father passed away, when I was in my 30s, I realized that it was important. It was important to start learning how to cook these dishes. And when I asked my mother, it was always agak-agak, right? There was never like, oh, you have to use exactly 300 grams of shallots and whatever. It was all agak-agak. So she would say something like, how much turmeric do I use? Oh, the size of my thumb. A pinch of salt, a toss of sugar, a fistful of buah keras, a sendokful of cooking oil, 50 cents tauge, right? And 30 eggshells of flour. Because I remember eventually I managed to pin her down to write down some recipes. And I wanted her recipe for koi pai tea, the top hats, right? Because hers was very, very nice, very fine, not thick and hard like some commercial ones. And I eventually managed to write it down. And I remember she said 30 eggshells of flour. So can you imagine how difficult it is? It's not exact, right? So now when people ask, so Kim, you've got to write down your recipes. It's going to be a lot of work, because I've got to sit down and start measuring them. So how did the Nyonyas do that? And how on earth did they pass down such a wonderful cuisine without writing? It was through the agak-agak way. Agak-agak actually means, it's a Malay word, right? Agak-agak, which means, I guess the closest equivalent would be guess, right? It's guess. But do you think the Nyonyas were just guessing? No, they were not guessing. So my contention is that it's a Malay word but we do not really have an English equivalent. The closest English equivalent would be guess, but it's not guess. It's guessing work, yes, estimation, but based on a lot of practical experience. It's impossible to just send your daughter a recipe over in Canada and cook it. She has to see it, and also we have to have our taste memories. That's very important. If you don't have the taste memories, you cannot get the exact texture of the particular curry or the particular rempah, right? Next slide. At the Peranakan dining table. So, at the dining table, the emphasis was on seniority, not ladies first and then men, gentlemen later. The oldest always gets to sit down first in order of seniority. So the oldest, grandpa would sit down first, followed by grandma, and then the rest would sit down. And then before eating, and I think this practice is also dying out, before eating we would address our elders. Kung makan, papa makan, pa makan, ma makan, and so on, right around the whole table. And I remember my grandparents and parents ate with their fingers, very assimilated. And and I wasn't so good with my fingers. I found it very clumsy, and I think the younger generation, my siblings and I, we use fork and spoon. And my ama, who was also at the table, she would put the rice in the bowl, and she used chopsticks. So that's Malaysia, right? Just at the dining table, we have got 3 kinds of methods of eating: fingers, fork and spoon, and chopsticks. Next slide. So I grew up in the Baba Nyonya household, in a house on Sinchuki Street. And if you want to take photographs, if you live in a lovely old house, I would advise that if you want to pass on photographs to your children and so on, take photographs of that house, of all the various features, of the beams, the rafters, the tiles, the walls, because I was trying to look for a photograph of the house in my photo album, but there were no photographs. They were all always on people. But from these photographs, you can see, well, it was a very long kind of house, pre-war houses in something like what you will also see in Changkat Bukit Bintang today, with a big front door. Facade is very symmetrical with 2 windows at the sides, and along a chimchair, a courtyard at the back of the house. And next slide. Okay, back to the previous slide. So sorry, this is a bathtub scene. Me and my sister. I'm the younger one. My sister is the older one. I'm the kok hyak. I was always falling, and I had a swollen forehead, and my grandpa would call me kok hyak. I don't know what's kok hyak. I think bulging forehead or something. So I'm the younger one. The younger one there with the jack ears, right? Okay, next slide. Oh, jack head. Okay, thank you. Anyway, so upstairs was this interesting feature called the peephole, and you can see the peephole there. You can still see this peephole, I think, in the Baba Nyonya Heritage Museum. In those days, the front hall, the front room sort of overhung over the veranda downstairs, and when people came a-calling, you go and look through the peephole, like to see who's downstairs. And you can see all kinds of interesting hits of people, buns and diamonds and whatever. So that was, in that time, the CCTV. Yeah, no doorbell, I wonder why. It's a very interesting old house, and sadly the house is no longer with the family. And that's a problem when you start dividing in shares, and then it ends up in the next generation, and it's so split up that nobody ends up owning it. So it's very famous today, sold to a very renowned architect, and it's come out in YouTube and so on. 16 Jalan Sinchuki. So upstairs in this front room, I have got an interesting story about this. So I wrote about this peephole and this incident in the story called The Peephole in Kabaya Tales 2019. In 2019, the publisher said, you have reached about, we want to come up with a new edition of Kabaya Tales. Can you just write 2 or 3 more short stories? And I was just given 2 months to write. Now, you can't just pop up a short story. It takes time, right? But I thought, okay, maybe I'll try and write a story about this peephole and an incident where, after my grandmother passed away, my mother told me to sleep in the bed that had been vacated by my grandmother. It was in a corner of the room upstairs, this particular room. And I told my mother, but grandma has just passed away. Surely you don't want me to go and sleep there so quickly. But but mother says, why not? You know, we've done all the rites and rituals, 49 days of observation of mourning. You sleep in that bed there now. It's empty. So I slept on the bed. And one night, I saw the ghost of my grandmother. So I wrote that in that story. She just appeared before me, white in her tesa and her sarong, just up to here, whitish, palish, with her sanggul. And she said, "Go amya tempat ni." In Baba Malay means, this is my place. And I remember I was just petrified, like, go tell mother put me here. And she remember her being very cross because she was trying to get into a bed, but she hadn't realized that she actually had left the world, right? So that was the incident of my first experience with my grandmother's ghost. I should have asked for a number, right? Empat nombor ekor. Okay, next slide. So, coming from an interesting kind of multicultural culture with so much hybridity and so many influences, it was quite fascinating in the sense that in terms of form, respect for one's elders, importance of the family structure, filial piety, honoring one's ancestors, traditions. But in terms of essence, the everyday living, very multicultural, cadences of many languages, aromas, earthy idioms, swear words, grandma with belata, you know, color, vibrance, love for food, dance, music, and joie de vivre. So there were lots of languages being spoken all the time. Father was educated in VI, and like what Tian is saying, could not speak a word of Chinese. Orang Cina, bukan Cina, right? Only spoke English and Baba Malay. Mother, because she's Penang Nyonya, spoke Hokkien as well as English, and both were very, very good in English. In fact, mother could just spout out quotations from Shakespeare and proverbs that where a stitch in time saves 9, and you know, 2 birds in a hand is worth 1 in the bush, and all that. You know, the old school English language education. So there was English being spoken, Baba Malay being spoken, Penang Hokkien being spoken, as well as Cantonese, because we had an ama. Next slide. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, okay. That is Sroja. So as I was saying, traditions. So during Chinese New Year, this is called Sroja, where is it not practiced in Penang? Right. Chinese New Year, where you honor your elders, and you go down on your knees, and you wish your parents and your grandparents a very happy Chinese New Year. Right. So grandpa, there's a photograph of my grandpa there, and that's my little brother. Grandpa will give him an ang pao, but before giving him the ang pao, he'll say, "You'll be a good boy, and I wish you, you know, prosperity, success, and so on." And again, I would like to call attention to the various costumes here. So my mother is the lady standing there in a sarong kebaya, and the lady at the back is her sister, my aunt, GE, in Cheongsam. So there was no hang-up. We are just like multiple identities. When I wear Chinese, when they be Chinese, wear the Cheongsam or the Sampu. When they want to look like Nyonya, wear the sarong kebaya or wear Western or and so on. There was no hang-up. So I think that was the beauty of the culture, right? There were no we're not compartmentalized. This is Malay, this is Chinese, there's Indian, this is Matsali, and so on. No. We just sort of adapted, assimilated, adopted whatever worked for us, right? If you like our pongteh with lots and lots of shallots and onions, but if you like potatoes, but there's English, never mind, put in the potatoes. It tastes wonderful, right? Pongteh with potatoes, right? Next slide. So there were lots of storytellers, fortunately, for me. Mother was a great storyteller, loved telling stories, made lots of dramatic expressions and sounds and lots of actions. The lady at the top is my third auntie, my mother's third sister, who is 94 today, and she's still got stories. She'll Skype me. She'll call me on Skype. She's so techie savvy. I had to learn how to Skype from my son, and then learn how to Skype with her, and she'll still tell me stories. So long-term memory, very good. My uncles, The uncle there who was at the launch of Money Mischief at the Peranakan Museum in Singapore, and the other uncle who was at the launch of Malaysian Flavors at Bonton, and my auntie, my father's sister. So sadly, all of them have passed away except my auntie, the one in the blue kabaya. So we are actually the middling generation, people of my vintage. We have a foot here and a foot there. We're not very immersed in those old traditions because we have been fortunate enough to have education, lots of opportunities, right? So the cost of that is that we are not so immersed in all those artisanal things because we have got careers, jobs, and so on. But at the same time, we still have links to that generation. So we are the storytellers. We are the repositories of information. And if you look at the young generation now, they don't know anything, right? They have nothing. From this whole family of aunties and mothers and grandmothers and the wonderful culture of food, the next generation, my nieces can't even cook an egg, you know. So we really are at the cusp of something that is fading, right? Okay. And also another storyteller that I had was my Amma, right? She passed away when I was 16, and she was there with us for a long time. And this is again a kind of like species, a kind of woman in the history of Malaya that has died out, right? There's no more the black and white Ammas, but they were the feminists of the time. They chose to leave China, come over to look for a career, and they were celibate. They vowed themselves to a life of celibacy. They had a sisterhood of fellow Ammas. And this Amma of mine told me stories of a life in China. How they had to, there was such starvation where all she could eat sometimes was just a plate of rice, and that's it. So to make the rice more interesting, she would just pour guan sui, just pour water. And sometimes if there was soya sauce, she'll pour some soya sauce on the rice, and that was it, right? So if you think poverty is actually very relative. And she was the one who told me the story, which I wrote in Malaysian Flavors, about how her father longed for this pair of slippers. So she saved money, saved very hard, and eventually made her way back to China to visit her family. And she brought presents for the family, and everybody was like waiting for the little gift from Malaya. So she distributed all the gifts, and at the end, the father was there patiently waiting for his slippers. But when she finally had the opportunity to give the pair of slippers to him, the simple rubber Fung Kiong slippers of the time, the father burst into tears. Why do you think so? Because she had packed in 2 left-footed slippers. Right. Yeah, that was really sad, wasn't it? So if you send your kasut manik to your daughters overseas, make sure it's a pair, right, and left foot, right? So all these wonderful stories. I'm sure all of you have got wonderful stories too. Next slide. Boxed in Bibik is in Kabaya Tales. So in my stories, I try to touch on all the themes that infuse all families and clans, stories of family feuds, family quarrels, fighting over property. I had an uncle who just dropped dead under the mango tree, and when the doctor scanned his what do you call it? The scan, they found lots and lots of needles inside, you know. This kind of interesting stories. Stories of betrayal, love, longing, kicked out of the house by our children, and so on. Box in Bibik, I write about a nyonya who keeps hiding all her things in the mattresses, you know, in those days. The old Bibiks, they do not believe in fixed deposit and bank accounts. They put all their money in the mattresses and in the pillows. And I think I heard from my auntie, the one in the blue kabaya, that my maternal grandmother, they lost a lot of property, lost a lot of money one day because the house caught fire and all the pillows and blankets all got burned or something like that. A promise is a promise, heaven has eyes, and so on. Next slide. And of course, I did not live, thankfully, I wasn't born then, the Japanese occupation. So here too, there were lots of interesting stories. Stories of how my mother and her sisters had to have their hair cut short made to wear boys' clothes and had charcoal smeared on them. Because Japanese soldiers came around knocking on doors, kunyan, 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 looking for young girls, right? And so they had to be disguised. and had to hide from the Japanese soldiers. Horrible stories of heads being impaled on spikes. And, but not all the experiences were frightening. There was also the story of the goddess and the Japanese officer, where there was this very kind Japanese officer who liked to come by to visit this house where my grandpa lived. And I think he enjoyed himself there. He liked to play the two little boys who reminded him of his sons back in Japan. And then I fused it with another story where one day this Japanese officer starts crying and sobbing. And he keeps saying, Hiroshima, Hiroshima. And that's because he lost his entire family in the atom bomb in Hiroshima. Next slide. So identity. So we're called the King's Chinese. I did an interview with, a Zoom interview with a student researching on the Babas and Nyonyas in Taiwan. And she said, is it true that you are called the Royal Chinese? But no, we're not called the Royal Chinese, right? We're called the King's Chinese because at one time we were under the British Empire, and that was the time of the golden era of the Babas and Nyonyas. And they owed their allegiance then to the King of England, and that's how they call themselves, the King's Chinese. Also very Anglophiles, lots of Anglophiles in the community, OCBC, Orang China, and lots of multiple identities because we live and breathe a very multicultural kind of culture. Next slide. My school was Bukit Bintang Girls' School. And in this school, there was this ethos of a love for language and literature. And during school assembly, I remember we sang choruses and hymns. And there was lots of drama and choral speaking and concerts and so on. Next slide. And so I move very comfortably in all these worlds, right? In this Baba Nyonya world, going to an English medium school, studying texts and literature written by English authors, and then going home to a household where there's pantang larang superstitions, right? Like for example, you cannot sing when you're cooking in the kitchen. You cannot sit on the pillow. Why? You cannot sing because it's bad luck. That's what we're told. You must eat up all the rice in the plate, otherwise when you get married, your husband will have a pockmarked complexion, right? You cannot pluck the leaves after 6 p.m. because you're going to disturb the spirits. And also, interesting stories about Kena Chiong, right? I don't know whether you've got a Penang Hokkien equivalent for that, but in Baba Malay, we call it Kena Chiong. For example, the story of my aunt in Malacca, busy preparing food in the kitchen, and she was pregnant, and then one day a monkey jumped on her. And when she gave birth to her little baby, the baby looked very monkey-like, very hairy. They call it bekenan, right? Kena Chiong. So interesting things like that to bring into the stories, but with no English equivalent. Next slide. I also wrote an essay called Those Three Special Words, because being educated in the English medium, you're to stories written by English authors, and you watch television and you see this actresses say, I love you, America. I remember Diana Ross, was it? I love you. So I thought, how is it that in this family of mine, nobody ever says, I love you? Love is never expressed. There's no I love you, but there's lots of love. You know that. You can see that. You can eat it. You can feel it. There's love, so much love, right? Especially in the food. Because in our culture, love is performative. It is not verbalized. It's performative, meaning we show our love through our actions, not through our words. But I decided to be an Anglophile one day, and at my Master's of Education, at the convocation ceremony, my mother came along with me, and I thought, okay, this is my chance. So I went up to my mother, gave her a kiss on the cheek, and said, Ma, I love you. And Ma said, Sia! Got scolded and got a scowl from her, right? So that's our, this is what I mean by multiple identities. We have to navigate our way. But when she was on the deathbed, I remember I said, I still want to say this. And on her deathbed, I said, Ma, I love you. And I think she appreciated that, right? Next slide. I also wrote a rather sad story called Through Lara's Eyes in Manic Mischiefs, and this was about my father. He was a very, very kind man. He was always he loved to help people. He was always helping people. He was called Vampire because he was always going around the office asking people to go and donate blood. And his very last breath, he spent it helping a friend. And in helping that friend, who was also suffering from cancer, he lifted the friend up from the floor and put the friend on the bed, because the friend had fallen off the bed onto the floor. And at the same moment, my father fell and died of a heart attack. So that was a very, very hard story to write. But when you write, you have to be very true to yourself. You have to write from the heart, and only then can the story ring true. Yes, he was very handsome. He worked for Harrison's and Crossfields. So next slide. Writing from the heart in a rich cultural heritage. So that's what I did, and I shared my journey, a Nyonya journey, in TEDx Talk 2017, because the curator came up to me and said, there's this whole swath of Chinese people who went to the Chinese medium who don't know anything about you Babas and Nyonyas. Can you come and tell us about the Babas and Nyonyas? So it was a Mandarin-speaking crowd, but of course they're also bilingual, and they were very curious about this OCBC people like us, right? And it has reached 42,000 views. So there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. So I've written my stories. There's no more agony. And if you're interested in the books, there's a list of books there. Because of the supply distribution problems now, because of COVID, it's really hard to find the books. They get sold out very quickly. And lastly, last slide. Thank you very much. You can follow me on my Facebook. And kamsia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Yeah, so let's all stand up for a stretch while the boys will set up the chairs for all the speakers for a question and answer session. Okay, anyone would like to ask a question? Yeah, Mariam?
The later migrants married Chinese themselves, that we are not true Chinese. If we went through a genetic test, we are not true blue Chinese. I mean, majority of us. Is that a right assumption?
Interestingly, the Genome Society in Singapore 2 years ago, they decided to do a test on the DNA of the Baba Nyonyas in Singapore. The Peranakan Association of Singapore, they volunteered. I think 177 of their members volunteered to have their, the blood taken and to be analyzed. And then the results was only published, I believe, this year. Yeah. And out of 177, 167 has at least 5% Malay blood, Malay DNA. Only 10 were 100% Chinese. So then it came out with a new debate, which was quite interesting, because then they say, those 10 people who are 100% Chinese, why do they call themselves Peranakan, So then the president of the Peranakan Association of Singapore, Colin Chi, said, let us define it as our practice, how we identify ourselves, rather than our blood. But answering your question, yes, most of us, we do have Malay DNA because we are intermarried, our ancestors married to the people of this land. That's the reason why we are here. Because in the old days, if you're talking about 100, 150 years ago, there's no the MM2H or passport or visa. The only way you can justify yourself of staying here is to marry a local Malay, And usually the Malay is an influential person. The daughter will marry you. And prior to Merdeka, maybe even 1920s, 1930s, the Malay father-in-law will tell the daughter, you ikut suami lah, tak payah kata dia masuk Islam ke, you apa, you just follow him. So that's how our Baba Nyonya identity came about lah. But of course, like what do we say nowadays is different. If you want to marry a Muslim, you must become Muslim. So it's a bit like our Baba Nyonya punya factory sudah tutup lah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Jimmy Lim. I would like to ask, moving forward, let us not talk backwards. How many Akong Ama here today still like the Ama cheng Tesa, Akong cheng the singlet and the sarung? How many Akong and Ama do speak our language? We have got grandchildren now. In those days, I used to hear my Ama, my Akong speak our Baba language, or Nyonya language. As Pat says, cooking all is done by the mother or the Ama. As now Dr. Lee says, even the niece now can't cook. So how many of us very sincerely touch our heart, do practice our culture? Does our grandchildren hear our language? No. Those Chinese will send them to Chinese school. Those English will send them to English school. At home, they will speak English. And they will have, and as Dr. Lee says, I love you, Ma. Siao ah. We, as Dr. Lee says, we show our love through action, not through words. Through our own truthful, sincere action. And the young gentleman from Malacca, do you wear sarong at home? Does your niece or nephew see you in sarong? You don't. But as you said, the Malacca Baba and the Penang Baba are 400 years difference. When the Malacca Nyonya assimilate with the Malay culture, because they were mostly Malays during their early arrival. The Penang Baba was 400 years later. And by that time, there were more Chinese community. So when most of my foreign friends asked me, you Baba kawin Melayu ka? I said, never. We never kawin Melayu. We just adopted Melayu culture. We adopt the pantang larang of the Melayu. Our young children, Moagwe, also, to Titao, also follows the Malay culture. Yes. So how many of us still do practice this?
Anyway, we try. We try. Yeah? We try. Even my granddaughter goes around in kabaya when she's required to. So do the in-laws that come in. They try. We try. They wear the kabayas. And my son used to sleep in a sarong. My father always goes around in a sarong and a t-shirt, pagoda t-shirt. My son wears the sarong. Yeah? I don't know what he does now. He doesn't stay with me.
I think, can I just say something? I think we just have to accept the fact that culture evolves all the time, right? It's never in a state of static existence. It's always in a state of flux. Right. And I don't think we need to bemoan it too much, right? I think what we can do is to make it attractive. A lot of purists and so-called proclaimed experts come and tell you, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, you're wearing your hair wrongly. If a young nyonya wants to wear just one brooch, don't go and scold her. You should be 3 brooches, your croissant is crooked, your sarong kabaya singing. Why is the butterfly facing the wrong direction and all that? So if the more we lament and go on and on about purity and keeping to the authenticity and so on, the more the young people will be turned off. When you go for all these Baba Nyonya events, you'll see, I can tell you very clearly because I go for all these events very often, the median age is 60 to 70, if not 80, right? I mean, just a look around this room will tell you so. So with the passing of time, if you do not entice, if you do not attract the young people to the culture, it will just die out. It will just end up like Nyonya restaurant, Nyonya museum, Nyonya in the museum, Peranakan material culture, and maybe dictionary, Baba, Malay, dictionary, Penang, Hokkien. But where is the culture? So to make it go attractive, I think we have to, at the same time, we try to keep it authentic, but at the same time, we cannot be so persistent and so almost religious that, you can't do this. Like I got scolded, why are there potatoes in the pongte? Why not? If I want to put potatoes, I put potatoes, So I think we've got to be flexible, make it attractive, try to pass it down to the next generation, whatever we can, but not to get paranoid. If it dies off, if it fades off in its own way, I think it will not fade off, it will just evolve into another form, right? If we compare ourselves with the Bibiks 3 generations ago, surely we do not want to be like them, right? If they had at that time said, we must keep it this way, then we wouldn't even be able to be educated, right? We'd just be like old Bibik at home, pounding the sambal belacan, or peeping behind the screen to see who the husband will be, right? Yeah. So it has evolved, and I think let's just celebrate and let it evolve, yeah?
Yeah, I would like to add something on the intermarriage here. Many of us thought that, Baba Nyonya started in the Straits Settlement where Chinese starting to take Malay wives. Yeah, but then we forgot that actually we should say that the beginning of Baba Nyonya culture started when the Chinese came to Southeast Asia, not the Straits Settlement, Malacca, Penang, or Singapore. Yeah, if we look back at the entire Southeast Asia, Indonesia is an earlier civilization. Yeah, and Chinese have settled down there for at least 1,000 years ago. Yeah, as early as 1,000 years ago. The intermarriage probably happened there. That was why many of us in Malacca also, hardly we have any Malay ancestors. Yeah, most of our ancestors that we can know that, this is the first generation that came from China, married a Nyonya, a local born already. Hardly we come across anyone that married a Malay lady. Yeah, so I believe that that so-called intermarriage happened in Indonesia. That is why the language that we speak, our patois, is very similar to Indonesian. Like the terms that we use, we don't say cawan, we say cangke. Like how the Indonesians will also use the similar term. Okay, so there's a lot of mixture. So when you come over, then we brought over all this hybrid culture that our forefathers could have brought from Indonesia. That is why we admire Indonesian sarung so much, Pekalongan and so on. Yeah, and at the same time, we adjust to the Malacca lifestyle at that point of time, and those who came to Penang would adjust to the Penang lifestyle later on. Yeah.
Heritage.
Yeah, Auntie Pat is one. Yes. From Phuket. When she was young, she only spoke Siamese.
Yeah, I don't have Siamese blood, but our family business was there. So we grew up in Thailand. Our relatives are still there in Talang Road, where you have your night market every day. We were in mining and rubber. So I had to come back for my schooling, and I lost the knowledge of how to speak Thai after that. Yeah.
Talking about Thai influence to the Penang one, one example is the Penang Asam Laksa. Because as you know, the earliest settlement in Penang is Pulau Tikus. So Ko Lei Huan and his followers went to Pulau Tikus. The Siamese and the Burmese Christian refugees who came during the same time in 1786 also live in Pulau Tikus. So like the Burmese temple in Pulau Tikus is the earliest, is earlier than even the Siamese one. So these are all, it shows that the Burmese and the Siamese and the Baba Nyonya people at that time were living together already in Pulau Tikus. So the Siamese have their own laksa, right? The Kenum Chin Nam Ya. Then the Burmese have the Mohinga. And you notice Penang Assam Laksa is a combination of those two. So that's how the origin of Penang Assam Laksa came about.
And I found out recently, I think about 3 years ago, from my uncle that his grandmother was Thai. So that means my great-grandmother was Thai. So it's quite interesting, even in the course of one's life, you're finding out your origins. So I've got Thai blood as well.
Lillian and me grew up in Kampong Serani. That's where the Phuket people come from. And we have been 5-6 generations with the Burmese temple. And that's where we learn how to cook the mohinga and the Burmese acha awa. Yeah? So we're in Leandros Lane in Pulau Tikus. So the Nyonyas there are known for their orchids. Penang Nyonyas are very snooty, snobbish. They divide themselves into 3 groups. The town Mantri Street Nyonya, the rich one. The Pulau Tikus Nyonya, the middle class ones who grow orchids. And the Para Road Nyonyas. So they can recognize each other by their sanggol. How they do that, God only knows. Am I right? The Penang Nyonyas who are here. Yeah? So they'll say, if you want to see orchids, you go to Pulau Tikus. Yeah, okay. So they are very snobs, big snobs.
My cousin Yancy is from Pulau Tikus,
Who?
Pulau Tikus Nyonya.
Chilean, did he? That's her name.
Yeah,
It
I
is
had an
Julian.
auntie who stayed in Landrus Lane in front of your house.
Yeah.
Because I remember Chui Lian was my primary school.
Oh, God.
class-
Our uncle Chow Kao and Auntie Babi.
She's next door. Lillian is next
Auntie
door.
Babi.
Yeah. Yeah. So my observation here is that all of you who are here have done a lot of research and have come up with a lot of interesting historical and stories that will help younger people recall what life was like for their ancestors. But I'm just wondering in the future, because that's what all of you have got as a theme. Like, what's the future of cuisine? What's the future of the way we behave? Thinking ahead, I'm wondering whether we should be probing younger people and having them to talk about how they live their lives and how much they can link it back to what their ancestry was like. I know in Singapore, the Gunung Sayang group put it into song and they encourage the young people to come on Penang. We do it through the small communities. But I think it starts at home. So maybe it has to be, how do we blend all the things that you all have through historical and oral history and lifestyles and make the younger people aware that they have to be linking back what they are doing now with what it could be. So I'm posing this as when you all have conferences or when you have activities, how much do you engage people who are young in their 20s to come out? Because I remember going to a convention 12 or 15 years ago, and people were much younger, and now we are much older, but it brought an awareness to me, right? So I'm sure if you start with that group of people who are in the middle, it will help. Have you all started on this in your respective areas?
That is a good suggestion. Now I'm thinking with my president back there, Dato Sri Tan Kin Soon, maybe the next convention in Penang, we will give half price for the, subsidized for young people below, say, even 30.
Writing the stories, writing the books and the stories of the Nyonyas and the Babas, I have had young people come up to me. For example, I gave a talk at a school, and this young girl come up to me, Dr. Lee, you know something? I read your book, and I just realized I think I'm a Nyonya because from what you described in the story, my grandmother was like that. She talked like that. She dressed like that. And she used the same expressions that your character in the story uses. So I think in that way, through writing our stories, through writing books, that's how we pass the intangible cultural heritage. So I think the stories have helped quite a number of young people to realize that, hey, this is also similar to me, and I'm a Nyonya, things like that. So yeah, I agree with you. Not just tangible cultural heritage, the intangible one is very important to pass on, and that's more difficult actually. Yeah, but I think there are two things that will live on if we all fade away would be cuisine, right? Now what's the other one? And costume and cuisine, the material culture and the cuisine. If not anything, I think the cuisine will live on, right? Malaysians love food, and I think food will continue. Even today, you see the word nyonya being used so loosely now, like nyonya this, nyonya that. I just saw Kentucky Fried Chicken, Nyonya Spice Chicken. I mean, Nyonya in Kentucky, We should ask Colonel Sanders for copyrights, to use the word Nyonya. It's like champagne in France. If you make wine from champagne, you can only use the word champagne. But we Nyonyas are seeing this word Nyonya being used for everything. Nyonya this, Nyonya everything. We should actually patent this word Nyonya and make sure that you preserve the true spirit of it.
Song and dance. And I remember I attended the first Baba Nyonya convention in Singapore, and I was so impressed that there was a chorus, a group of young girls dressed in white kebaya tops and nice sarongs, and they were singing Di Tanjung Katong, and they know all these songs, and I think it's a low-hanging fruit. And if you can form a young chorus group that will sing and popularize Nyonya songs and feature them at functions and all that and get them excited so that just like we know some songs, I mean, I know this Di Tanjung Katong from childhood and it stays with me, So if you want to perpetuate the culture, this is one way. I think it's a very low-hanging fruit.
We have a difficulty because, like, I have my Sang Nona dancers, and we've been trying to recruit young girls. And at one point, I have my daughter and her friends. And then they all went to be architects and posted to Sarawak and elsewhere. And then I have slightly, like maybe 30, 40-year-old girls. And they will say that, oh, my daughter is having PMR. I have to finish guiding her through this year. So they never joined us, and it's only the ones like me with our kids in college that we have the time to just devote ourselves to it. Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, I think this is something that all the associations are facing. All our respective associations are trying very hard to preserve the culture and to get the younger generation to be involved. They always say that, Tian, you are the youngest among us, so can you bring your friends? I say, not all my friends are interested in this. Yeah, so I believe it starts from the family, from the house. The association, we can plan wonderful things. If we don't start to send our own children, make them have the effort to bring the children to the association, it would never work. So it is always, start from home. Yeah, and then when you have this awareness that you spread to them, then they have the knowledge, then they would find this, they would associate themselves with the association that they have to contribute something. You might not necessarily be interested in dancing or singing. You may be interested in other things that can contribute to our culture, like Dr. Lee, can write. Maybe someone is a singer, can sing or compose Peranakan-related songs. Yeah. Those who are interested in dancing, of course, you can dance. We cannot force, you come to association, then everybody say, you must dance, man. Then, before they even start to come, they already, you don't want. There's some maybe, cooking I like. But not all like cooking. Yeah. So we, of course, it start, like I said, from home, and then slowly we have different kind of activities. We cannot say that, we have dancing, we make younger girls to sing, then we can get younger generation. It don't work like that. Yeah, it maybe work for a year or so. Then later on, they have to go to school, college, and everything. So, I think all the associations facing the same problem. So, I always encourage people who talk to me Just start from your house. You tell them, let least or encourage your daughters or son to wear kebaya or batik once a week to office. Kebaya top, wear with jeans okay. Don't force them, you must wear with sarung. How to walk to office? Just, just put on a kebaya top, then maybe that would, or at least put on kasut manik to office. That would actually give new purpose to our attire rather than have it hanging in your cupboard. Yeah, maybe come out once a year or maybe twice when your cousin gets married or what. So have it every week or at least once a month kind of effort on kasut manik or something. Yeah, then that would actually give hope to the culture to continue to be relevant in today's context.
Yeah, I think it starts with the family, and mine is a classic one. My daughter owns several suits of sarong kebaya, and she makes her own kasut manik, and she can do sulam. She learned from Auntie Kim, who is a relative of ours. And my sister has a daughter. She's 35 years old. She has never, ever worn a sarong kebaya, and she will not wear one. So that's, I think, about how you enculturate your children.
Coming back to the talking about dance, now you hear of people paying money to learn tango, to learn the Great Waltz. Do people pay money to learn ronggeng?
No, ronggeng is free. 2 days time, 21st, it's free. Please join. We need men.
That's why free bo tat lui, lao bear.
Oh, so sad, because it's a professor that's teaching us. 21st and 22nd, Joe Sidek will give you more information. Yeah, we prefer men because we've got overload of girls.
But there's Janet Lee singing and also a ronggeng band on Saturday. Please check the website and Facebook.
Okay, so that's our afternoon of stories and our wonderful speakers all the way from Malacca, Kuala Lumpur, Penang, and Penang. So thank you very much, and remember to sign up for the ronggeng class. Go online at Peranakan Penang Facebook, and you can get the link. Thank you. And thank you to Joe Side. I think he wants to say something to the speakers. Joe? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for coming.